Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. You can follow The Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS. You can follow Moneylines on Twitter at Moneylines. He is our baseball betting savant with the League Championship Series still going on, at least as we record this here on Monday afternoon. Remember to give the video a thumbs up and ring the bell to get notifications whenever The Lines releases a new sports betting video on any market, including the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA tipping off tomorrow. So that's exciting. Mo may have some content up on the website. Not like I'm pushing him to do anything there. I think that's more so Steven, but I digress. Also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. If you're checking us out, just listening to the content available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Eli Herskovich. And hopefully you're following our bets this season here on Beat the Closing Number. Mo, we are a combined 18-9 with spreads and totals this season so far through 7 weeks. When you hear that, what do you think?
I feel like I should have a lot more money.
Well, on that note, how did your Week 7 bets go?
Small loser, I think. Very bad halftime bet. Cost me, basically. Should have been breaking even, slightly losing juice. But, I thought maybe there'd be a punt at some point in Browns-Colts. That was a erroneous assumption.
Wild back and forth game, and we'll touch on that game when we get to the second of 3 matchups. We're going to hit on 4 NFL Week 8 games, looking at spreads, not totals, just spreads. So Thursday Night Football, Bills, Bucks, Seahawks, Browns, as I alluded to.
I might have
Chiefs.
something to say about a total.
Okay. All right. Good tease there. Chiefs, Broncos, and wrapping up with Sunday Night Football, the Chargers, the lowly Los Angeles Chargers against the Chicago Bears. So Mo just about broke even. It sounds like, maybe small loser, like he said. Good week for me. 17-10 overall this season. Ravens cash. I'm not going to rub it in your face, Mo, because I actually respect you, unlike some handicappers. Patriots also hit home. And Broncos even money on the money line came through for me. Luckily, Jordan Love interception, where he had A.J. Dillon over the middle of the field on that final play for Green Bay offensively. Fortunate for me that Jordan Love was piss poor in the first half and off script in the second half, led to some high efficiency throws. But Denver able to get that game-winning field goal on their second to last offensive possession, really the only of those 2 offensive possessions that mattered, and cash that Broncos money line bet. About time, man. About time with the Broncos. Had 4 losers on Denver before that. But Baltimore, New England, and Denver hit for me. By the way, with the Ravens, 126.8% DVOA in that win over Detroit. Goff again struggles in poor conditions, this time the wind. The best single game DVOA result this season and the 14th best since 1981. Any takeaways from Ravens-Lions? Maybe on Baltimore moving forward. I'm pretty happy with my Ravens futures, at least in terms of them having a shot, maybe to come out of the AFC after that performance. Their best game of the season by far. And then we'll touch on Steelers-Rams and that terrible spot that gave Pittsburgh the victory, even though probably deserved the win anyways. But any thoughts on Ravens-Lions first, Mel?
No thoughts whatsoever. I don't think there's anything you can take away from that game. The Lions just straight up no-showed. I mean, you lose an NFL game by 40, especially on the road, which is where you see a lot of these no-shows. You just didn't show up, and you just didn't come to play. And, I know my buddy Rich Ryan likes to say that the Lions are immune to no-shows because of Dan Campbell, and it looked like maybe they were, but maybe they were reading a little bit of their own headlines. So, they definitely mailed that one in.
Hadn't faced really, and not that we saw a full, complete offensive performance from the Ravens up until yesterday, albeit probably over 3 quarters, because like you said, it was a blowout. But Baltimore's explosive passing offense was able to get down the field at will against that Lions secondary that's been banged up throughout the season without TJ Gardner-Johnson and Mosley, I think, for the rest of the way. But on to Pittsburgh and LA, just because that was one of 2 poorly officiated games. Pickett getting the generous spot on 4th and 1 at the 2-minute warning. The Rams don't have any timeouts, so they couldn't challenge the spot. Who knows what happens if LA gets the ball back? Maybe they go for a game-tying touchdown and then win the game with a touchdown in overtime to cover or push, depending on what number bettors got the Rams at. If anybody did bet the Rams, could have potentially pushed on LA -3. But like I said, LA just barely outgaining Pittsburgh in yards per play by 0.3 yards per play. Kenny Pickett with 4.1 total expected points added EPA, better than Matt Stafford, who had just about a negative 1.00 EPA on the day. Not good for an exploitable or up against an exploitable Steelers secondary up until yesterday. Steelers able to get a lot of pressure, and that led to the TJ Watt interception early on in the second half, which set Pittsburgh up goal to go, believe, and able to cash in with a touchdown on that ensuing possession. So anything there for Mo? I know your handicap was pretty much spot on with the Steelers. Cashing with Pittsburgh had around +3. I was with you on that side. Didn't bet it, but felt good with Pittsburgh. Takeaways from the Steelers and Pittsburgh sitting at 4-2 after the bye.
Yeah, I think just a good bet. I think a relatively evenly matched game, like I thought it would be. And just a simple way to handicap. I think it's just a shortcut going forward, honestly, against the Rams or for the Rams. Honestly, if you are leaning that way in a certain week, just look at if the other team can get pressure on Matt Stafford. I mean, he can't move anymore. And if I see a defense like the Steelers that can win up front and can harass him into not being able to plant his feet and fire, I'm just going to keep taking those sides, I think. So, and then I'll be maybe looking to bet the Rams in spots where they face defenses that can't put any pressure on Matt Stafford.
One last question for you before we get started on these 4 games here. How much do you think Jalen Hurts can leg press?
I'm told he can squat 600, so he can probably leg press like 9. So good for him, but I don't want to hear about it anymore. Next, they're going to tell me Tom Brady's age on the broadcast.
Mo tweeting that out last night. Sunday Night Football. It was a big story down the stretch with the tush push, brotherly shove given the Eagles a couple of 4th down conversions and able to go up 2 possessions on that ensuing drive. But yeah, we heard about.
But I'm just also like, I'm looking at these plays and I'm like, I would have got a 1st down. I mean, it does not matter how strong Jalen Hurts is on these plays. Like, it's the Eagles, they could put their backup quarterback in and the same thing would be happening. Their interior offensive line is getting a far superior push compared to what other teams are able to do. Every other team I see try to use this, it seems like it's like 50-50. And then with the Eagles, they get 3 yards. So I don't think it has anything to do with Jalen Hurts a lot of the time. A lot of the time I'm seeing him, nobody's even touching him until he's already got the 1st down. So, I mean, whatever the Eagles are doing, I congratulate them because other teams have tried to replicate it and they can't.
I'm going to throw you, I lied, one more quick question in terms of the betting market here. If we look at the NFC East odds, Philly around -200. That's the cheapest price for the Eagles to win the division. Dallas, seemingly what they were to open the season at around +180. Believe I got them at +195. I don't want to do too much of a deep dive. Maybe we'll touch on more Eagles and their ensuing matchup against the Commanders before they play Dallas in week 9. But you kind of hit on this in our Discord channel. And for anybody that's not subscribed, you can head over to thelines.com, get into our Discord channel. It's a free availability, essentially, to get our bets as soon as we place them. Just head over to the rules section of the Discord channel. But what did you make of Philly last night, man? Because Jalen Hurts made some great throws, but Dolphins missed their fair share of opportunities, whether it was the Tyreek Hill drop touchdown, whether it seemed like he kind of was. You rarely see that with Hill. Maybe you more so than others because you were a Chiefs fan and you saw a lot of Tyreek Hill, but kind of looking ahead as opposed to just catching the ball. And then Jalen Waddle coming back into the game either late in the 3rd quarter or early in the 4th quarter, and poor route with he and Mostert in the same area leading to the Tua interception. Eagles cover, game goes under, but I still wasn't that impressed with the Eagles. Maybe that's just my intuition with this team and maybe my priors speaking from more than what they showed last night. Your take there?
I feel the same. I think the Dolphins left a lot on the field. This is a game where I also thought it was a pretty one-sided officiating contest. I didn't have a dime on the Dolphins, but I thought they got a pretty raw whistle that pretty much that whole game. I think it was 10 accepted penalties to 0 at some point in the fourth quarter. So, I thought it was pretty poorly reffed, to be honest. And, obviously that Tyreek, I mean, he should have jogged into the end zone. But as I was saying in the Discord, every Chiefs fan has seen this so many times. I know that Tyreek Hill makes all the big plays and everyone sees all the highlights. He has not, he drops balls like that on a pretty regular basis. I mean, maybe it's a volume thing and you're just seeing so many passes to him that there's bound to be some drops, but I have seen many, many high leverage drops from him. So it's not that crazy, and it was very unfortunate for me. But yeah, I'm with you. Eagles, I mean, they're good, but I think we still saw some poor Jalen Hurts plays, and just don't think he's the quarterback that I would be super comfortable having the ball in their hands with a final drive about to happen against a decent defense.
Dallas, by the way, game and a half back in the division, and looking at their schedule, like I said, they play the Eagles in week 9, Rams in week 8. May touch on that game on the Thursday edition.
I think now's probably a good time to buy in on Dallas, just because the Eagles have a hellish schedule coming up.
Yeah, we alluded to that last week. I mean, it is a gauntlet, man. I think we touched on that with Todd Furman, our guest. Really fun episode to beat the closing number last Thursday. But outside of this Commanders game, and if you want to consider it a look at spot to Dallas in week 9, I don't blame you. I may end up on Washington. We'll see if the number gets to 7, but 6.5 is still appealing to me. Then it's after Dallas, bye week, at Kansas City, Buffalo at home, Niners, NFC Championship game rematch, at Dallas again. So facing the Cowboys for the second time in 5 weeks, if you want to include the bye or excluding the bye. And then at Seattle, like I mentioned, then the Giants, Cardinals, and Giants to wrap up the regular season. So pretty favorable way to end it. But that is, I mean, the Eagles started out the season the way they had to, with the way the schedule lines up.
Yeah, for sure. This is Dallas's chance. I mean, you have to gain ground here. You have to gain a lot of ground. I think they probably need to be ahead by the time that stretch is over, which they very well could be.
I'm with you. And some sharp people in the betting space bet Dallas to not only win the division, but make the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl at around 16-1 preseason. I think it's still around that number. I'm not saying that I'm buying into it. I have just a Ravens position and that's it. But I do kind of like that Cowboys price, considering only a game and a half back. You have the Eagles in week 9. Favorable matchup with the Rams. We were touching on this, even though the spread is around 5.5, 6. Fade LA potentially against stout defensive fronts. Cowboys coming off the bye with one of the best pass rushing units, as we saw with Micah Parsons against Herbert in week 6. Down the stretch in that game on the Chargers' final offensive possession. But I digress, Mo. Week 8, as we look ahead to these 4 games, and if you're planning on betting any week 8 action, first-time users with BetMGM Sportsbook can use bonus code THELINES to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Remember, that's promo code THELINES. Terms and conditions apply. Remember that bonus bets are not equivalent to real money. Mo has his Survivor Guide up on thelines.com and my college basketball power ratings. Officially 2 weeks away from the start of the season. Those are up on the Lines homepage too, with 2 futures looks. Those are also in the Discord channel. So Thursday Night Football, Mo, Bills against the Bucs. Buffalo, a 7.5-point home favorite, total of 42.5. If you shop around and you like Buffalo, there are some juice 7s out there. Look at line was 8.5. Keep that in mind. Josh Allen, I know the Bills have a ton of injuries, more so on their defense, but Bills offense really hasn't looked in sync the last 3 weeks, and Josh Allen was outgained by 2.4 yards per pass attempt against Mac Jones. Pretty astounding stuff. If you said in the Bills-Patriots first matchup of the season, before the season began, that we would see a number like that. And like I said, banged up Buffalo secondary. Outside of Tre'Davious White, actually, they had most of their pieces in there, but White, obviously, their best coverage corner. No Matt Milano, Daquan Jones. Both of those guys believe out for the rest of the season. Ed Oliver was out for this game, so Bills pass rush took a hit too. And on the flip side, Tampa Bay losing as a 2.5-point home favorite to Atlanta. So the Bucs have lost 2 straight games coming off the bye. Desmond Ridder outplaying Baker Mayfield. He outgained Mayfield in yards per attempt, 9.4 to 5.7. Pretty incredible number there, considering all the hate that Ridder got, by myself included, after that Washington game. The Bucs offensive line ranks just below league average in pass block win rate. Keep that in mind if the Bills get Ed Oliver back. You were touching on this earlier in the season when we were hitting on some Bills. I think it was week 4 in the Commanders matchup. As a home favorite of 7 points or more with Josh Allen, 17-1 straight up. So that's not against the number, but straight up. 17-5 straight up, 14-7-1 against the spread against the NFC in his career. You think about AFC usually having the upper hand against the NFC just in terms of power ratings. And you kind of said this earlier in the year too, Mo. When the Bills have the upper hand against the opposition as a sizable favorite, you usually see Josh Allen take care of business. So do you think we get a bounce back performance from Buffalo on Thursday night?
I'm not sure. This game is a tough one for me as far as that goes. It's hard to trust the Bills at this point after 2 straight very poor performances against just overmatched teams, like 15-point favorites, and they almost lost to the Giants. And then you want to believe that's a one-off, but to lay an egg here in a divisional matchup was pretty rough with that as that big of a favorite. But at the same time, how can you trust the Bucs either, In this matchup especially, Buffalo entered week 7 number 1 in pressure rate. And one thing we know is Baker Mayfield will completely wilt pretty often under pressure. So not a spot where I would want any part of anything other than possibly a Bills teaser as far as sides go. I do like that the Bills got Dalton Kincaid much more involved this week. I think he had like 8 catches for 75 yards or something. I think they're just been begging. They need something other than Stephon Diggs, man. Just way too over-reliant on Diggs. 15 targets every week, and that's fine. It works fine when you
But that was the weird part about the Patriots game yesterday. The Bills' explosive passing plays just aren't there. And I hate to use couch speak here or Monday morning quarterback, but watching that game and watching some of the replay of it, Josh Allen just missing throws to Diggs when he had space in one-on-one coverage. It was pretty absurd. We usually don't see that between those two.
Yeah, definitely. And I just think, against a Patriots team that is very good at taking away your number 1 option, we've known that for years, that was always going to be a tough spot for them. And so it was nice to see them get Dalton Kincaid involved a little more. I think if that keeps going, that's going to help the offense a lot. Josh Allen versus the blitz, that's another thing I'm always looking at when you face a Todd Bowles defense. He's always going to try to blitz pretty often. And his PFF grade is a bit lower. It's not bad, though. But we have seen him. I think that jives with kind of what your eyes tell you watching the Bills this year. It's kind of been the same thing he had down the stretch last year where he just had some bizarre, just like brain farts. I don't know what you want to call them, but just bad misses, like you were talking about, bad sacks at times when he's been under pressure. He'll need to be a lot better in this game because Tampa Bay, very difficult to run on. They have, I think, the second best EPA per play allowed versus opposing running games. Honestly, because I think the Bills should be passing and probably it'll work. And we've talked all year about how you can beat this Bills secondary. This total seems very low to me, 42.5. I know.
Short week, though.
The Bills, yeah, I know that the Bills, their defense has a good matchup in some ways here, but at the same time, this secondary is beatable, and they have very, very good receivers, obviously, for Tampa. My fear, it's just so hard to bet Tampa, honestly, in any sort of game where they don't have like a significant advantage, just because you just know their offense is going to have the most vanilla approach every week. They're just going to pound the rock with 0 success on early downs, and it's just mind numbing at times. And yeah, I know primetime unders are usually just printing, but this total seems very low to me. I am interested in the over.
And to your point too about Allen under pressure, ranks 22nd this year in pressured catchable pass rate at an even 50%. Pretty wild to just see that stat. Media is usually all over Josh Allen in a positive sense, but yesterday, and like you said, Belichick's really good at taking away the number one option, even though I thought Allen had some chances with Diggs. Zone, he mixed in some zone, and Allen usually struggles against zone. Baker, as you pointed out, and with the Lions game in week 6, struggles against pressure. It's every time Baker goes up against an above average defensive front. Maybe a Bills teaser leg worth looking into. And I guess since we're not going to talk about Bills Bucks, if I just look at the board here really quick for anything that stands out to me on the surface, I'm not forcing a bet or anything like that. But if we look ahead to any other options for week 8 to pair the Bills with, unless you're just looking at the overmo and not looking at anything in that regard. Maybe the Ravens, maybe you tease the Ravens down from 8 to 1. I know that's
those road favorites have been pretty rough this year on the teasers.
Chargers? You do like the Chargers this week. And
I would say Chargers and Lions are both good options. I mean, Ravens isn't the worst either, I think, just because Arizona has been so bad. Basically for almost a month now, honestly. They've been just atrocious. And yeah, I would be just stunned if the Ravens didn't, pretty easily win that game. But man, like I said, these road favorites have been really bad this year.
Yeah, unless we get a letdown performance from Baltimore, which could seemingly happen. You saw it with Dallas in week 3. So maybe it happens with Baltimore as a favorite of above a touchdown this coming Sunday. And speaking of Arizona, they lost to Seattle yesterday, 20-10. Game goes under. Seattle was steamed up, and Arizona actually failed to cover. Maybe doesn't seem like a surprise on the surface, but Cardinals won the turnover battle 3-zip as 9-point underdogs, closed around 9.5. And teams as 7-point underdogs or higher, who are +3 or better in the turnover department. Mo, get this. 165, 6-3 against the spread entering Sunday in the wild card era.
That's how bad the Cardinals are right now.
Yeah. Josh Dobbs, -9 total expected points added. Pretty bad stuff.
Oh, man, I know. The Seahawks were definitely the right side in that game. I mean, they should have been up by so much more than they were.
Yeah, the turnovers didn't help Geno. For sure, but Arizona also didn't take advantage. I think Prater had a shot to cut it to a 4-point game in the fourth quarter. You miss a chip shot field goal. I think it was around 34, 35 yards. But that Bobo catch, man, Bobo is
nice.
Fun name to say.
Yeah, my buddy said he was the man at UCLA, so he watches all the college, so I defer to his opinion on that sort of thing.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson to Bobo on late night Pac-12 After Dark. For any of our college football viewers and listeners out there, I know Brett Gibbons of the Lines does great work on the college football show with Kelly Ford. So looking ahead to Seattle's next game as we touch on Seahawks-Browns in week 8. It's a 3:05 kickoff, Central Time, 4:05 Eastern. Seattle up to a 3-point favorite. Look ahead line was around 2.5. Seattle -3 even money. There are some juiced 2.5s in favor of the Seahawks still left on the board. Low total again for a Seahawks game. Rightfully so. 40.5. And that kind of goes to show you where the market's head is at with the Browns, despite Cleveland and Indy combining for a shootout and then some. As you said, you didn't get the best of the under in any sort of way in week 7. I mentioned that crazy number with the Cardinals failing to cover against the Seahawks despite winning the turnover differential like that as a touchdown or greater underdog. Since 1950, I know you've already heard me say this once today, Mo, but since what? So over the last 72 years, NFL teams hadn't won a game in 631 contests when allowing 38 points, throwing 2 picks, and getting outgained by 110 plus yards. The Browns were the first team since 1950 to get a win in that with those numbers in mind over the Colts yesterday. And they got the help of those defensive pass interferences or holding calls on their final possession. Deshaun Watson seems like he's going to play after exiting the first quarter. It seemed like Kevin Stefanski was trying to hopefully have him avoid any sort of more damage to that rotator cuff that he's been dealing with, the shoulder injury, even though he exited the game initially for a concussion. But this game is so interesting to handicap because on the surface, you say Seattle, just based off of the fortune that Cleveland got, and just looking at the market here, market is already moving in the Seahawks direction. But take in Geno Smith when he's up against any sort of pressure with a banged up Seahawks offensive line, although we don't know the status of a lot of those guys leading up to this Week 8 game, is questionable, as we saw in Week 6 against the Bengals.
Yeah, I agree with the move from 2.5. I think it's honestly probably only going to keep moving towards Seattle. I could see this one closing as high as 3.5. I think at least this is going to close like flat -3. So I'm definitely interested in the Seahawks. Yeah, I mean, right there in my notes, like you said, Cleveland just got a very, very lucky win. I thought they were soundly outplayed by Indianapolis. Really weird vibes going on that team with Deshaun Watson. And, you know, PJ Walker has made me some money in the past, but man, I mean, he's been mostly terrible this year. Like, we just have to be real. It's been pretty ugly. I think our buddy who came onto the pod, Suma, had a absolutely hilarious tweet like an hour or two ago I saw. I think he said that the Browns scored 23 points in a stretch where they gained 59 yards. I think that's what he said, which sounds about right. I mean, that's, you know, and that's kind of baked in, right? When you do face Gardner Minshew, we know he can be loose with the football at times. We know he has.
You got that stat on a dime. 23 points, accumulating 59 yards.
Yeah, this is obviously insane. We know he has like a go for it mentality. We know he's going to give the ball away at times, especially against an aggressive defense like Cleveland. They also had an absolutely insane field goal block. I mean, Myles Garrett jumped over somebody. I mean, okay, that's awesome, but I don't think it's going to happen again, probably.
Yeah, not really predictive.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. Obviously, Myles Garrett is pretty much one of the best athletes in the world, probably. I mean, I don't think that's really a stretch to say. But yeah, now facing, honestly, a much better passing offense. You know, I know Geno at times has had some bad moments himself, but under pressure in recent weeks, taking some bizarre sacks at times. The Seahawks have probably been one of the worst teams over the last few games as far as like converting yards into points. Like, they are marching the ball, outgaining the opposition. This is supposed to be much more predictive than these fizzle outs at the 10 that keep happening. So I'm guessing the Seahawks are going to score some more points at some point. I'm very tempted to buy them off 2 games like this where they probably should have been 2-0 with, I know this is going to sound ridiculous to some people, but they probably should have won by double digits in both of those games, even though they lost to Cincinnati. I mean, they went 1 for 5 in the red zone. This is obviously crazy. But
to your point, and to both of our points about Geno and the Seahawks banged up offensive line facing pressure, that's what happened in the Bengals game.
Right. And then you look at this Browns pass rush, obviously, and you just struggle to imagine a situation where Geno isn't running for his life. But at times he can make great plays doing this. We've seen it going back to last season. They had a putrid offensive line last year too, and he was dealing for most of the season. And he's done it at times this year too. I mean, DK Metcalf, he threw a absolutely beautiful pass to him under pressure that should have been a touchdown. I know that it was a tough play. I'm not going to sit here and dump on DK for not making that play. It was a very tough play. So, but that could have easily been a touchdown. I mean, it was a great play, and Geno makes great plays like that all the time. But the last couple of weeks, it has been mixed in with some extremely bad plays as well. So, a lot of variance. But man, I am a little bit interested in Seattle for sure. I'm just terrified of this offensive line against that pass rush.
You brought up Seattle's inefficiency marching down the field, or once they get down the field near and in the red zone. 33% red zone efficiency over their last 3 games. And I know red zone efficiency has been down in the NFL, maybe up until week 7. We saw some overs cash yesterday. But over their last 3 games, their red zone efficiency ranks tied for the 4th lowest with the Tennessee Titans.
I'm honestly surprised anybody's been worse.
Well, Tennessee, which kind of makes sense, considering the Baltimore result a couple weeks ago. Arizona, the Jets, and the Giants. Are you surprised after I read that list?
I guess maybe not as surprised at this point. But, I mean, honestly, when you these teams are just so bad, and it's just wild because the Seahawks are a pretty good team. I guess I shouldn't say that. The Jets are decent.
Hey, you want to talk about pressure rate on the flip side? Cleveland has the 6th highest pressure rate in the league. Jets ranked number 1. And, I mean, their defensive line dominated that Eagles game. I don't want to say they were the sole reason or the number 1 reason why they won that game, but close to it. And Jalen Hurts making erratic throws down the stretch did not help. But I would keep in mind the Seahawks injury report, offensive line-wise. Like I had on Abraham Lucas, Phil Haynes, Evan Brown, their status unknown for this one. But Mo, if this, I guess we'll reassess come Thursday. But if this line stays at 3, even money, maybe a juice 2.5, you're looking towards Seattle?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely interested in Seattle. Have not pulled the trigger yet.
Okay. On to the third game here on Beat the Closing Number. Remember, you can check out play.thelines.com if you're interested in any NFL Week 8 contest, or if you're consuming Beat the Closing Number before Monday Night Football, and any sport really. We give away Amazon gift cards really on the daily. Another late afternoon game on Sunday. Chiefs at Broncos, rematch of Week 6. Kansas City, anywhere between a 7.5 and 8-point road favorite at Mile High City, or in the Mile High City, down from 8.5. So the line reopened at 8.5, which is where it was on the look ahead. But then we saw some Denver money come in late last night and early Monday morning, if you're checking us out here on Monday. Total of 46. That has been steamed up, but also saw some interest in the under as it got to 46.5. Rematch of the Week 6 Thursday night football game, and Kansas City just barely covered, although they did outgain Denver by over 1.5 yards per play. But Denver giving away a field goal in the final, 30 seconds of that first half, with Sean Payton seemingly calling one of the dumbest timeouts in NFL history, at least as it relates to the point spread, because that gave Kansas City a gimme field goal.
Depends on how bad you want Caleb Williams, whether it's dumb or not.
That's true. Maybe
that was like the subtle, or not so subtle conspiracy tanking theory going around the Twitterverse, I think.
You wonder. But the result yesterday at least gave me positive affirmation. I know I've been betting Denver a lot, and it's hard to avoid the Broncos when I keep having a quote-unquote edge. Hopefully yesterday's game is the start of the turn for me. But as you can assume, I am going back to the well with the Broncos. I bet Denver +8. You can find that play in the Discord channel over at thelines.com, the link in the top right-hand corner. So Kansas City covering that 10.5-point spread in Week 6. And that was the finale for me of the 0-4 stretch I had with backing Denver against the spread. Got one back yesterday against the Packers. You got an 11, though, luckily, with the Broncos. That did end up pushing. And I want to go back to, even though the Broncos obviously lost that game by double digits, Denver has the 3rd ranked run block win rate this season, 52% rushing success rate in that first matchup. Javonte Williams, even though you called him out for saying he was much healthier going into the Packers game, looks a lot healthier, looked healthier even in the Chiefs game. McLaughlin still breaking off some explosive runs, and his success rate, I think over 50% going back to the Packers win. Denver, as we both played on, even though you played the under in Broncos Packers, 32nd ranked tempo in neutral situations, which correlates to the Broncos running the ball efficiently, and they can't move the ball with Russell Wilson, and he missed a couple gimme throws, including a second down throw to Javonte Williams that maybe was catchable, but also was behind Williams. And it's not like Javonte Williams is Samaje Perine or McLaughlin, but Chiefs allowing the 3rd highest EPA per carry this season. As I said, They gave up their fair share of chunk plays to Denver in week 6. Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton, by the way, dislocated wrist in their win over the Chargers, out 2 months. And he's their best run-stopping linebacker. And Kansas City has that Germany game in week 9 against the Dolphins. So a potential look-ahead spot here. I still think this number is slightly inflated, considering if you give home field advantage about 1.5 points in today's NFL, if you think closing number in Broncos-Chiefs week 6 was 10.5. So on a neutral field, that's down to 9. Maybe 7.5, depending on how much you want to equate to the altitude in Denver. I still think that's one of the bigger home field advantages in the NFL because of altitude. Maybe I give them 2 points. So I still think this line is slightly inflated in the Chiefs' direction. Travis Kelce also, man, I'm really curious. I know he has played pretty much a full snap count going back to the Broncos game and the Chargers game yesterday. Kansas City covering that, and we'll touch on the Chargers here in a second. But that ankle sprain is still bothering Kelce, as you saw yesterday, even though Kansas City covered the 6-point spread. Justin Herbert was pitiful, and so is that Chargers defense. But I am betting Denver, as I've stated. I really like the Broncos in this spot to cover. I mean, this is not to use the cliche, this is their season, but I still think they have a pulse in terms of what they're playing for. I don't think they've completely given up or paid. I don't expect any trades ahead of the trade deadline this week. But what say you with Broncos Chiefs, Mo?
I like Denver a little bit too. I think everything you said is pretty much spot on. I have a lot of the same stuff in my notes, actually. Like, first thing is just same thing you said. Chiefs closed -11 at home. So now playing on a road where like a road spot that actually is meaningful. So why are we north of 8.5 here on this line, or north of 8? I mean, it doesn't really make sense. The line seems a little bit too high to me. When I was looking at the look aheads, I thought this should be 7 at most. So I think Denver's probably a bet above 7. And a lot of the things you say are definitely true. I don't know if I agree about Kelce. I thought he looked pretty good. I know that he's like, he had a tough time separating from man coverage. It seemed like the Chargers really switched up to a more aggressive man defense in the second half, and it slowed a lot of the Chiefs' offense down. I thought people weren't getting open as much. He's still just a genius, and if you play zone against him, he's going to find the spot. So I think attacking him with man coverage is probably a little better. He was having some tough time separating at times against man, but I also think that might just be because he's 34 now and just not as fleet of foot as he once was, So I don't know if Denver has the horses to do that. We know the Chargers have some great athletes on their defense, obviously, but one thing that you were talking about with Nick Bolton is definitely spot on. Man, that looked very, very painful for one. Excuse me. Yeah, that looked like a very painful injury.
Tearing up over there for your starting linebacker.
He was not looking like he was in a lot of comfort there. And then, he is very strong against the run, and his replacement, I think this is the big key, is Drew Tranquill, which on the one hand, having Drew Tranquill as your replacement linebacker is tremendous. He is a very good player, but he's a very one-dimensional player is what I should say. Like, everything he's good at is against the pass. He's good in coverage, and he's a very, very good blitzer. So not such a good, he's a bad tackler. So he's pretty weak in run support at times. So I would say that if anything, the Chiefs' run defense is probably going to be weaker than it looks on paper this week. Overall, I would just say, even though the Chiefs played a very strong game in week 7, I mean, they were probably one of the most impressive teams. They completely destroyed the Chargers, which is a very talented team. I know that their record is bad, obviously, but we all know that this is one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and they had nothing for the Chiefs. But we've seen divisional road favorites of this size have a tough time multiple times.
Buffalo yesterday.
Buffalo, the Eagles. The only thing is, same thing I said before when the Chiefs played the Broncos. I just worry about any situation where Patrick Mahomes is under no pressure. I mean, the Chargers got whooped up front by the Chiefs in the passing game yesterday, and it was a laughable situation. I mean, he's just dropping back in just the most dreamy pockets, and this is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's just free yards at that point. So if you don't get any pressure at all, you're just dead. And I don't know how you can slow down this team, because the weakness of this offense is probably at tackle. They haven't been very good, but at the same time, you have a Denver team that is 31st in pressure rate. I mean, and they blitz actually relatively often. I mean, they're in the middle of the pack. So we saw that in the other game. I mean, the Chiefs moved the ball up and down the field. They just kept kicking field goals. So, I feel like I was kind of lucky to get a push, honestly, at 11. I mean, the Chiefs probably should have won by more, but I don't know. I do think Denver's the side, though.
You gave me a great segue into Broncos pressure, even though, like you said, Denver ranks bottom 2, bottom 3 in the NFL in pressure rate this year. Getting Baron Browning back at linebacker was big, not only against the run, but 4 pressures against the Packers.
He's a good pass rusher.
Yeah, he is. Weaker Green Bay offensive line than Kansas City, but still, notable number in his first game back, 25% pass rush win rate. So getting him back and likely playing more snaps, more meaningful snaps. And you kind of touched on this too with Kelsey, going up against Kelsey. You have to either, and Denver's secondary, having Justin Simmons back there, as he missed the 2.5 games leading up to the Chiefs' loss, push for some, cover or not cover. That was the 4th Broncos loss for me on the season. Not salty about it or anything like that, but having Justin Simmons back there and healthy is big against Kelsey, Surtain was pretty much shadowing Kelsey around.
Yeah, the second half, I think they just gave up on anything else. They were just like, we can't do anything against this guy, so you're our best player. You go cover him, and we'll see what happens.
Right. I think we may see the same. By the way, Denver penalties, too. It's not only tough to back the Broncos in a potential negative game script, which is potentially on the board every single game with this Broncos team if they're not able to exploit the opposition in the run game and establish that very slow, methodical, neutral script tempo-wise. But penalties yesterday. I mean, Sean Payton, as I continue to dive into the reports around Denver, because I'm seemingly backing them every week, Payton was in Vance Joseph's ear, and rightfully so. Just substitution issues for this Denver defense. And it's not like these are now backups playing. Also, Kareem Jackson continues to get ejected almost every game. Why doesn't he just give us the money instead of taking the ejection? I'll take the 40, 90 grand, whatever it is. Every game he's getting ejected. Although I will say I would rather him get suspended this week. Who was the guy that picked off Jordan Love yesterday? Because he subbed in for Jackson late. Who was it? PJ Locke had the pick as he swept over there and made the game-winning play for Denver. So thankfully for me, finally cashed a Broncos ticket. But yeah, I'm still optimistic about Denver, at least in terms of getting value with the number. And I think it sounds like you're going to be on the Broncos too, above 7.
Yeah, I think so. Another thing is, like you brought up, this could be a good live betting game. Just make sure Denver doesn't fall way behind basically early on, and then you can probably take a lesser number and be fine. Because we saw what happened when they got into a negative game state against the Chiefs before. I mean, the Chiefs overwhelmed them up front, and Russ holds onto the ball way too long. The Chiefs have a pretty good pass rush, and Steve Spagnuolo is very creative dialing up his blitzes. So Russ was just completely lost, basically, in must-pass situations against the Chiefs. So I would say if they fall behind by, 10 points or something in the first half, it could be curtains for Denver, because we could be seeing another sack fest for the Chiefs defense. I mean, they sacked Russ several times in that game.
On to the Sunday Night Football, so literally the finale among the Week 8 games on Sunday. Chargers, speaking of LA, 8.5-point favorites against the Bears. It's down from the look-ahead line of 9.5, total of 46.5. As you touched on, Kansas City held Herbert to, looks like, I believe, just over or just under a full point in total EPA, 2 picks. Coverable game for much of it, even though, like you said, Kansas City dominated up front in the trenches, getting a lot of pressure on Herbert and keeping the pocket clean for Mahomes. But LA was down by a touchdown-ish for much of the game. Spread closed 6. Chargers secondary continues to be exploitable. Brandon Staley, his calling card as a head coach or as a DC, and then turn head coach with the Chargers. That defense run defense wise and against the pass, getting picked apart. But now they face Tyson Bagent, who got his first career NFL win in his first career start against the Raiders. Josh McDaniels, you want to talk about tanking? Sean Payton maybe doing so 2 weeks ago. Starting Brian Hoyer may have been the white flag for the Raiders, even though they were at 500 going into that game against the Bears. Maybe not. He called out Aiden O'Connell after the game. But you have a bet on this game between the Chargers and the Bears on Sunday night.
Yeah, I like LA. The Chargers were minus 10.5 here in look-aheads in some sites.
Oh, so even higher.
Yeah, so there was 9.5s and 10.5s in the look-ahead markets, and they're now 8.5, and I'm not understanding it because what we just witnessed was Tyson Bagent, thankfully having a nice game and covering for me for the Bears. I had some Bears money line, I think, and we definitely gridiron gamble. We took the Bears in the contest, but I mean, dude, this is just such a different situation than that. I mean, you're facing the Raiders at home in that game, hosting a backup quarterback on a bad team, and then now you're just, facing a long travel against a defense that's actually got a pulse. I know the Chargers have been beaten up at times by very good offenses, but this is still a very talented team with, when they've gotten destroyed, it's been, Miami, the Chiefs. Like, Tyson Bagent is not even going to approximate this sort of production. I mean, they had success at some times moving the ball against a bad Raiders defense, but dude, Tyson Bagent had an ADOT of 3.5 in that game. Okay. Once NFL defenses get that sort of thing on film and they aren't the Raiders, where you're in a positive script against the Raiders, this is as good of a situation as you can be in as a quarterback, right? That sort of thing is not going to work once teams are game planning for you, once they have film on you. I think the Chargers are going to destroy the Bears. They are playing against a bad team here at home for their season. This should be Chargers by double digits, and I will be very surprised if it's not. So I think Bagent is probably, unfortunately for people who love this story, which, hey, he got some nice cover for me there last week, and honestly didn't even embarrass himself really that bad coming in cold against the Vikings. They had a chance to win that game, but that's another terrible defense, and at home again in that spot, I think he's going to just get wrecked in this game. I just feel bad for saying that because it's a nice story, but I think the Bears are going to get flattened here.
Who cares, man? It's not like you're a sports talk radio host. It's a nice story. You're better.
It is. He's played for something Shepherd Rams. I don't know what a Shepherd Ram is.
I don't know what a shepherd. I don't think anybody really knows what a shepherd ram is. I said Tyler Bagent last week, and it's not only Tyson, but it's Bagent. So
that's what I'm hearing. Yeah,
that's what you're hearing. It is first career start, about to make his second on Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. Chargers have allowed the second most EPA per play this season, right ahead of the Broncos. I'm not saying you're wrong on the side, because if I was going to bet this game, I would bet the Chargers. And as we hit on from the get-go with the Bills, maybe you tease Buffalo down with the Chargers. Kind of squarish, kind of chalky, but good bounce back spot for both teams at the very least. So if you are going to bet any sort of teasers in week 8, remember, you could do so at BetMGM with bonus code THELINES to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets. If your first bet loses, promo code THELINES, one word, for an up to $1,500 bonus bet back if that first initial bet at BetMGM Sportsbook fails to cash. Remember that bonus bets are not equivalent to real money, and as always, terms and conditions apply. Mo, any final words before we get out of here?
No, I think we said a lot, and unlike many weeks, 2 bets that we already have out there. So a week where I guess we have some early conviction.
Yeah, no, it's definitely juxtaposed to the last few weeks. These are 4 potential bets if we want to count the Bills and a teaser lag. Not saying Mo and I are going to do that. Remember to follow our picks and bets in the Discord channel, link over at thelines.com. Subscribe for notifications, see if we put a teaser in on Buffalo. But yeah, we have some thoughts on every single game we discussed. Definitely different than recent weeks. So for Moneylines, you can follow him on Twitter at Moneylines. You can follow me on Twitter at Eli Herskovich. Follow the Lines on Twitter at The Lines US. Mo and I likely going to have a World Series betting preview later on in the week, along with our Thursday edition of Beat the Closing Numbers. So until then, thanks for watching and listening. So long, everybody.